We're getting close. We have at least one and maybe both presidential candidates looking to adopt Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a way to encourage innovation because they know it's happening. I mean, the real killer is all this innovation is happening, and there are Americans, many Americans are coming up with these innovative things, and then they geofence the US.
Yeah.
In effect, not allowing anybody in the US to try their product. And all those great products are happening outside the US, and all those customers are able to innovate from that new platform. And we're not, because there's this big dark cloud that is the SEC today.
This content is brought to you by BitGo, which is one of the top crypto custodians in the crypto industry. BitGo works with many big companies and brands, such as Pantera Capital, Bitstamp, and Bitcoin IRA. Nike also selected BitGo to power its wallets for its NFTs. And BitGo has many great services, such as hot wallets, custodial wallets, self-managed cold wallets, and NFT wallets. Many institutions trust BitGo with its top-level security and incredible services, such as being able to deploy your capital while it's in custody, which includes lending, borrowing, trading, staking, DeFi access, and more. If you'd like to learn more about BitGo, please visit bitgo.com, link in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me is Tim Draper, who is a legendary investor, the founder of DFJ, Draper University, Draper Venture Network, and Draper Associates. Tim was an investor in many different companies such as Tesla, Skype, SpaceX, Twitch, Robinhood, Coinbase, and many others. And he also wrote a book, How to Be the Startup Hero. Tim, it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Tony, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun.
So, Tim, I've seen many of your interviews, and I want to take a bit of a different angle because I want to get to know a bit about you and your journey to investment. Where were you born, and what was your childhood like, and what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I was born in Highland Park, Illinois, at the center of the universe. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a baseball player. I collected baseball cards. That's where I learned math, or some of my math. Teachers taught me a lot of it, and then baseball cards got me thinking about averages and and that was the beginning of going into complex math. And I was mostly into sports, but I also I had a real penchant for math, and I got bumped up from second to third grade, and third to fifth grade, and fifth to eighth grade. And then I was in eighth grade math for about 4 years in a row. They didn't have any other math for me. And then I went away to high school. I went to Andover, and turns out Andover's not an accredited high school, but it's the #1 high school in the world. So it makes you think about the accreditation in a new way. And then I loved Andover. I then flew home to Stanford. I live near Stanford. And I went to Stanford, studied electrical engineering. I was on their football team for a couple of years. Coach Walsh, Bill Walsh, was my coach, who was the big 49er coach that brought 5 Super Bowls to the 49ers.
Oh, yeah.
I studied electrical engineering and physics and creative writing. So it was kind of an interesting combination of things that I learned. I was a student senator while I was at Stanford. And I was going to be a physics major. It's where my mind was headed, but my dad said, "Yeah, you get a good job in physics if you get a PhD. And I was thinking, no, it's time to get out and doing something, get a job and whatever. And he said, but if you're an electrical engineering major, there are a lot of jobs for you. And so he guided me in the right direction. And then I worked for Hewlett Packard for a couple of years and created something called Stanford the Game, which was a board game, which was great, also great fun. And then I went to Harvard Business School and just got back from the reunion for Harvard.
Oh, wow.
And worked as the assistant of the president of Apollo Computer while I was there. Apollo was competed with Sun Microsystems at the time. And now it's all part of Microsoft, I think. Everything is a part of Microsoft, all of those advanced computers. And then when I got out of business school, I worked for Alex Brown, the investment bank, for a year. And after a year, I felt like I was ready to go create a venture capital business of my own. And I am always willing to just jump in and see how it goes. And so I did that I took over an SBIC that my dad had. My grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist. My dad was a pioneer in venture capital. I took over an SBIC that my dad had, small business investment company, that had 3 or 4 companies in it. They were all private. Nobody knew what they were worth. The SBA valued them at $2 million. I was able to borrow $6 million from the SBA on that $2 million of private companies and get into business. And that's how I built my record, and that's how I got started. And after 3 years, it looked like I had lost all the money. And then the IPO window opened up, and I had 5 IPOs all. Wow. And one was Parametric Technology. And still to this day, Parametric, I think, is the largest software company in the New England area. And then from there, I just took it one step at a time, brought in a partner, John Fisher. We worked together on a fund, brought in another partner, Steve Jurvetson. We worked together on a fund. And then we kept growing and growing and growing. And then we became kind of the #1 venture fund in the world in, say, 2003. After the boom and during the boom, we were #1. And after the bust, we were #1 because I took us international. And that worked out very well. We did Baidu and Skype internationally. And then after a number of years, I started to get pretty rich myself personally. And so I was able to spin out from DFJ and start my own a business again. So I did it again. And when I did that, I had the freedom to do a lot of other things, a lot more experimental things. Y Combinator had just started, and I thought, wow, that's an interesting model, and maybe I should be doing something about that. I started Draper University, and that ended up, at first, it was very difficult, and we had all sorts of problems, but it got better and better and better, and now it's by far the place to go if you're going to be a venture capitalist. I mean, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, because we've had, I don't know, 5,000 entrepreneurs through there. They've started about 1,200 companies, and 5 are unicorns, and about 15 are worth more than $100 million.
Wow.
And they all started at Draper University. So that's been a huge success. But it was, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Mm.
and I just started it. I started Meet the Drapers, which was a crowdfunding where the viewer could crowdfund a show where I interview entrepreneurs and the winner goes to the next level. And that has ended up, at first I could hardly get my mother to watch. And now I think we have, I think we have 200 million viewers.
Wow.
So they're all over the world. It's a huge thing. We've got to deal with TikTok now.
Mm.
And Draper Associates, the venture fund, has done extraordinarily well, better than I did with DFJ. And we've done extraordinarily well, and we have really embraced AI, not just as investors into AI, but also as users of AI. It helps us with doing diligence on our companies, doing diligence on those industries, diligence on the individual entrepreneurs, and now we even have, if you go to Draper.tv, you can see our show, but you can also see this thing, Draper Decentralized, and that is my digital twin. That
I've
is
seen
my
that.
deep fake. And we've now done more than 50 of these where the deep fake is talking about one company or another of ours. And it's fascinating. It's like, I mean, generally, I don't want to even look in the mirror, but I love it because it gives me that 1 minute view of what's going on in each of those companies at that time.
Mm.
And those are key events because they tend to be press releases that my deep fake is reading. So we also have Seer, which one of our companies that can detect if somebody's lying. So we can run videos through that. And we have Otter, which where we take videos and it transcribes all the meetings that we have. And we can look back and say, wait, what was that company and how did they, isn't there another company that does an artificial kidney? Isn't there another company that is doing hyper speed and rocketry or, all those things? And that has been really exciting. And so AI has really captivated me. During the time when I had left DFJ and I was starting Draper Associates, starting to supercharge Draper Associates. I also had an opportunity to buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and I did at a very cheap price.
Yeah.
And then I lost it all to the Mt. Gox thing. I bought it at $4, like
Wow.
$40,000 Bitcoin, $4. It's all gone to Mt. Gox or whatever.
Wow.
And then but I realized how important Bitcoin was going to be. And so I bought a bunch from the U.S. Marshals office. And that has been a fantastic investment. And it continues to be. I mean, I'm still a buyer of Bitcoin, net buyer of Bitcoin, because it really looks like it's something that will transform the world. It's, I know every, country leader is always very concerned about their own fiat currencies, but Bitcoin is just better currency. It's a better way to store value. It's a better way to buy and sell. It's easier to move from one place to another, so there's less liquidity issues, and it's just, it's global, it's open. Doesn't matter what happens within a country. You can always use Bitcoin. It's always acceptable. I just talked to Proppy, which is one of our companies, and they have real estate. They're doing real estate on the blockchain, and that includes doing title on the blockchain.
Mm.
And I started to think about it, and it's like now you can have your own bank and you can keep your own title in a decentralized, safe, verified way without dealing with a central government, without dealing with the files of the county or whatever. This is a whole new transformation, this world that's opening up to all of us. That's the decentralized world where everybody gets to participate and you're not isolating certain people because they come from one country or another. So, long answer to a very short question.
No, amazing, Tim. Thank you for sharing those details. And, as you're talking about your journey and starting different companies and so forth, do you ever look back and say, wow, man, I've accomplished a lot? And what keeps you motivated to be in the investing space and to think about these things versus going on a yacht or an island somewhere?
Yeah. If I go to the beach, I love it. But, if I go for more than a week, I feel like I have to tell the hotel how to run their business. So work is in me. I love work. I think it's a great thing. And yes, I do look back, but actually people help me look back
Mm.
because people come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to thank you. You put my son in business. You built you know, Draper University gave me a total transformation for my life. I was on Meet the Drapers. It was a fabulous thing." Those things come to me. And what's great is that people will come to me and go, "Wow, somebody talked about you in Brazil, and then they talked about you in Saudi, and then they talked about you in Chicago, and I heard about you in all these different cities. You've clearly done something." And I think just by grabbing this one thing, which was to spread entrepreneurship and venture capital around the world, I do get to look back and say, wow, almost everywhere in the world they have venture capital, and almost everywhere in the world they have entrepreneurs. And that was not true when I got started. It was Silicon Valley and Route 128 and nobody else. And so now that has made me feel very good. But there's so much more to do.
Yeah.
And I'm hitting my stride. I mean, God, everything's great. I can do little things that can have big impacts. So work continues to be more and more fascinating as I get older.
I love it. Going back to your journey with Bitcoin, what was your first discovery of that? Did someone tell you about it? Did you see it on a forum? And when did it click for you? What was your aha moment?
Yeah, Joel Yarman mentioned that I should look into it, and he was my associate at the time. And he introduced me to Peter Vicen, and Peter told me all about it, and that was 2010.
Mm.
So very, very early. Bitcoin was at $4 a share,
Wow.
dollars per Bitcoin. And they started to tell me about it, and I went, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. We were going to have digital money. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, I talked to this guy in Korea who was from Korea, who was talking about how half of the people in Seoul were playing this game, and I think it was called Lineage.
Mm.
And that game, he paid real dollars for a digital sword for his son for his birthday.
Yeah.
And I went, what? And then I thought, oh my God, real money, digital products. And then I thought, digital money. And so I thought that eventually digital money would happen and go game to game. But I think people just did it within games so that there was, gold for Farmville and something else for some other game. I thought those things would connect and they'd all be a currency that we would all use. And that way it would be game to game. Or, all that trading would happen, and we'd have multiple currencies that we would all use in this virtual world. But then Bitcoin showed up. Something I wasn't thinking about at all was the security of the money in game, because I was thinking, oh, it's just play money in the game. But when they came up with Bitcoin, that the ability to have a trusted third party that was all software, that was a major breakthrough, and it jumped out at me. And I was intrigued enough to make an investment in CoinLab and in the Bitcoin with Peter. But it wasn't until I lost the Bitcoin to Mt. Gox and Bitcoin only dropped a little bit in value on that news that I knew that there were lots of uses. And so I went and I dug into all these uses. And it was like people who were unbanked are using it to pay each other and build their own little economy. People who were making money in the US were using it to remit money to another country. People who ran big businesses were using Bitcoin to pay employees out there in lands where there were no banks. So it was clearly going to improve the world economy. And I thought, wow, that's really exciting. And then I ran into this guy, Sebastian Serrano from Argentina. And he said, my family has created a fortune 3 times in the last 30 years. And every time we've lost it to currency manipulation by the government. Bitcoin is our savior. Bitcoin is going to save our business. We're going to be able to build something of great value and keep it. And that was where I knew that Bitcoin would be a great store of value, but it would also be a currency that at least that country, Argentina, would want to use for their economy. And then, of course, El Salvador followed, and then Panama and Japan and Malta and Gibraltar, and they all made Bitcoin a national currency, and it started to really, steamroll. And now Bitcoin is actually challenging fiat currency. People are saying, wait, why do I hold dollars if I can buy my food, clothing, and shelter all in Bitcoin? Dollars I know are going to depreciate in value, even if I've got it in a CD or whatever I put my money into. I'm still losing it to inflation. If I hold, spend, and invest and pay taxes all in Bitcoin, first of all, the accounting is easy because it's all done on the blockchain and it's all honest. And second of all, it's a better way, more efficient, better way to run your business. So eventually we're going to get there. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. I believe the world is going. And you know what? I think both Warren Buffett and Jamie Dimon believe that too, and they're scared to death.
Yes.
And they're going, but I have all these dollars. And when there's a run on the dollar, they're going to be screaming at the bank saying, get me my dollars out and get them into Bitcoin. I mean, it will be like, you should have seen the panic on people's face when Silicon Valley Bank stumbled.
Yeah.
I had about 15 companies call me and say, I need emergency money to pay my payroll for the next 2 weeks because all my money's in Silicon Valley Bank. So after that, I said, okay, any company we fund, your treasury has to have some of the money in a big bank. And everybody goes, yeah, of course. some of your money in a small bank. And they're saying, why? And I say, because the US government can still bail out a small bank, not a big bank. And then some of your money in Bitcoin. And they're saying, why? Why Bitcoin? And I say, because if these banks go out of business, big and small, you are personally liable. You and your board are personally liable for payroll for your company. And you might have a company with 100,000 employees, and you're personally liable for no matter what happens to the banks.
Mhm.
And so if you have Bitcoin to cover it, you're good. And I think that, more and more women now have Bitcoin wallets, and women control about 85% of retail spending. So when the retailer recognizes that they can save 2% every time somebody buys something in Bitcoin, they're going to start saying Bitcoin accepted. And then at some point, they're going to say only Bitcoin accepted. And that is the point at which everybody's going to run to the bank and try to get their dollars out. And they're all going to go at once, and it's going to be chaos.
Mm.
But people who have Bitcoin, who just thought ahead and bought some Bitcoin, are going to be able to relax that day and go, okay, so the dollars are gone. My dad gave me $1 million note, and the $1 million note was a Confederate $1 million, Confederate money.
Wow.
But the South, I said, oh, great, what can I spend it on? And he said, nothing. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the South lost the war. And so everybody they printed money, it was inflationary, it was all this stuff. But the only dollars anybody would take were the Union dollars because they won the war. And so the Confederate money became worthless. The same thing is happening now. It's happening slowly, but it's happening. We're seeing huge inflation in the dollar. It's getting to be worth less and less in a shorter and shorter time. Meanwhile, the purchasing power of Bitcoin is much higher relative to the dollar. So, no wonder Warren Buffett's screaming.
Yeah, and Jamie
And
Dimon.
no wonder Jamie Dimon's screaming. They're controlling all the dollars. It's not going to go well for them unless they get on the boat.
So Tim, what are your thoughts on what the future of currency may look like in context of what you're saying? Is it that they solve the fiat currency problem by making it digital, maybe a CBDC, but it's backed by gold, backed by Bitcoin, or to what you're saying, we are going to a Bitcoin standard. It's not going to happen overnight, but maybe in 50 years, that is the case.
Yeah, I think it's less than 50 years, but I think it's 10, 5. But I was optimistic on my last prediction, so maybe it's more than 5. But I have always looked at stablecoins as a bridge to Bitcoin. I think eventually we're all going to Bitcoin, but stablecoins are a good bridge, and they're all based on the dollar or the dollar, euro, yen, or the something, right? Well, when the dollar collapses and inflates out of business, so does the USDC and USDT. So you've got to, sure, it's more efficient. It's a better way to move dollars around. Those things are better. It's just better to hold. But it's really a bridge to Bitcoin where you have a currency where we know how many there are out there.
Yeah.
No government can go in there and start screwing around with it and change the number of, naira or pesos or whatever just because they're the king of their land. So this is coming.
Do you foresee, though, similar to what happened with gold? You remember the United States had confiscated people's gold. I know Bitcoin, due to the
And they standardized on gold, and then they went, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing because going on the gold standard was good, and then going off the gold standard was good. because when you were on the gold standard, you knew exactly what was in the currency. And
Mm.
going off the gold standard, you allowed people to move more currency based on the full faith and credit of the American government. But now, what happens with Bitcoin?
Mm.
You get the trust that you had with gold, with Bitcoin, and then you have the second the second layer, double second and third layer. Are they called layers?
Of
Somehow I'm having a mental block. So,
of the
of Bitcoin. So you got Bitcoin, that's a blockchain, and it's a slow blockchain. Then you got the second, what do they call it? Layer two.
layer
Layer
twos.
two?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So you got the layer twos and layer threes. They're like when you go off the gold standard.
Mm.
So they allow people to go off and go trade as much as they want on other blockchains, on other side chains, and then come back and equalize on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Mm.
So they'll go off and they'll trade on Lightning Network or on, you know, any number of these side chains, and then they'll after a lot of transactions, then they will remedy or reenact on the Bitcoin blockchain, which moves slower but keeps absolutely perfect records.
Yeah. So do you foresee or do you believe that the ETFs are almost a Trojan horse? They're good in the short term. They allow people to get exposure. It takes Bitcoin into the mainstream and to Wall Street, but you don't actually hold it. I believe in self-custody. What would be your recommendation to investors who are watching and listening to this?
You know, it's easier to hold an ETF than it is to do self-custody. It's just easier. You call your broker, I want to buy Bitcoin, get me some Bitcoin. He gets you the Bitcoin. It's like easy. But all you're doing with an ETF is betting on it going up or down relative to the dollar. Well, if the dollar goes away, I'm not sure what happens to your ETF.
Hmm.
But I do know that I would rather hold an ETF of Bitcoin than to hold on to a dollar.
Hmm.
But I'd rather hold the Bitcoin itself than to hold an ETF of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So there's three different levels of what I perceive to be risk. And yes, you're exactly right. In fact, I haven't ever bought an ETF,
Hmm.
um, but I'm kind of tempted by Kathy Wood's ETF because she's really cool.
Yeah, I've had Kathy on. We've had a lot of conversations around these things, and obviously she's going to be in favor of an ETF because ARK has one. But I tried to tell people that I come across, look, okay, maybe dabble in ETF, but hold some on your private hardware wallet. Just keep
Oh
it.
yeah,
It's yours, your private keys. No one can take that away from you. Um, so
no
Tim,
question. I mean, if yeah, best advice, Bitcoin on Ledger.
yeah.
Yeah, you want to do something. That was BOL was what everybody was saying when Silicon Valley Bank went out of business.
Mm.
They were all going BOL or BOC, Bitcoin on Coinbase, but it was BOL,
Mm.
Bitcoin on Ledger, and Ledger is now actually easier to use than it used to be. So that's kind of nice. The new Ledger stacks, it's
Oh yeah.
terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep doing iterations and it's getting much better and easier for the common average Joe to use it. So that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
the old ones were very kludgy, but now Ledger's a great thing.
Now you mentioned earlier you bought 30,000 Bitcoins from the US Marshals Service auction. If I'm not mistaken, you said you're still holding those Bitcoins and you continue to add to your portfolio. So is this a long-term
I
bet?
do, but I've invested some. I actually have bought more,
Hmm.
invested some, given some away.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm a hodler. I you know, And it's the easiest thing in the world to do. You put it away and you just go,
Yeah.
that's it. In fact, I don't even know if somebody said, here, you got to get all your Bitcoin out. I go, I think I need like 15 people to do that.
So in addition to your Bitcoin holdings, I know your fund invests in different companies like Propi. I've read Tezos. Are there other altcoin projects, if you want to call them that, you're investing in? Are you investing in companies that are building an infrastructure like your wallet services and so forth?
Yeah, we have Arkham. We did a big investment with Arkham. We think that what they've done, that guy is just so brilliant. And he's done extraordinary things, and he's putting names attached to Bitcoin wallets. And of course, the U.S. Marshals Office is always very interested in what they're doing over at Arkham. And then they have a token which people need to use to find out who owns what wallet or what wallets are doing what.
Mm.
And that token has done very, very well too. So that's been a great success for us. We've had Tezos, Bancor, Propi, way back when we did Handshake. Yeah, so we've had quite a few, and more recently, we've got a bunch of investments in companies that are issuing tokens
Mm.
for one purpose or another. But before anybody issues a token in my portfolio, I always say, what is the purpose? Why is someone going to pay real fiat dollars or real Bitcoins to buy your token? Why? And they've got to have a real reason after, just other than speculation or whatever.
Right.
And sure, DeFi is important to create more liquidity in the marketplace and all that stuff. But I think the most important uses of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are retail use, which is coming,
Mm.
investment use, and running businesses use, because you're going to want to run your business without having accounting, auditing, bookkeeping, whatever. You want to run it just that way. And then smart contracts, because you can create a great contract. Say, I invest in you with 20 Bitcoin. You give me 10% of your business, and we're off to the races. And we can do that all on a smart contract. And even in the negotiation, we can tweak the smart contract. And then everything gets written up in legalese, but the smart contract is the thing that drives the whole deal. So that, I think, those are probably the best uses. Now, all sorts of uses to the blockchain, all sorts of uses to a wallet. You can hold everything from your passport to your real estate deed to your Bitcoin to your ordinals to your whatever.
Mm.
Runes, all that stuff can be held on, and eventually will just be a part of your phone, whatever that ends up being.
Right. Um, Question about the future of fundraising. Obviously, you're in the venture world, you're investing in companies, but we saw in 2017 the ICO boom. Do you feel that is the future of fundraising where you can crowdsource globally? And would companies and entrepreneurs still need folks like yourself? Or maybe you can serve as a middleman to help facilitate an ICO, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think venture capitalists will start being more value add,
Mm.
particularly if good entrepreneurs can raise money from the masses some other way. And for a while there, it did look like ICOs were just going to be the way. Everybody was going to raise their money through an ICO. And in effect, what they were doing is day one for their business, they were going public.
Yeah.
Um, and um, that's interesting. The SEC went after all the groups that were trying to comply, and they left alone FTX. And I mean, no method to their madness. Um, so yeah, I think that there will be other ways to raise money, and that's just tokens are a type of ownership.
Mm.
Stock is another type of ownership. And when we invest in a company, we usually take both.
Mm. That makes sense. Um, Tim, because you brought up the SEC, and I just recently had Hester Peirce, commissioner, on the podcast, and we were talking about crypto regulations and so forth. But going back to 2018, you spoke to now Chair Gary Gensler, but he was, I think he had, I don't think he was, no, he was not at the SEC then. And you
No,
had
he's a professor at MIT.
Yes, and you had incredible foresight where you told him how this industry would be attacked with the press mentions, the weaponization of regulators, the government friends being called up, and I don't know, we can't prove this, but most likely Jamie
He
Dimon.
became one of those weapons.
Yes,
What the
Tim,
hell?
how, do you look back? I mean, looking back, are you like you were like an oracle? I mean, you foretold exactly what was going to happen.
Well, I've lived a long time, so I can predict with better accuracy than somebody who hasn't lived a long time. But I've also lived meeting entrepreneurs, and they are always telling me about what they think the future is going to look like. And so whenever I hear one, I go, huh, how's that going to affect everything else? And that's where, I kind of feel like, okay, I do have a little bit of an edge in being able to predict what the future will hold. And it's kind of funny because people come to me and they go, yeah, that thing you said 10 years ago happened.
Yeah.
And I look at them and I go, what thing? God, I don't remember. I just say I just tell it the way it is, and I tell it the way I expect it to go.
Mm.
And then 10 years later, people go, oh, yeah, it went just the way you said. And it's nice of them to remember that I did it. I said it, but generally I don't remember.
So Tim, what do you think about the legal battle? So because, Ripple, I think was the first to really get sued, the big major lawsuit, right? They came out with that with a partial victory where the judge mentioned intrinsically these tokens are not securities. It's very much in line with Howie. It wasn't the oranges or the orange trees or the orange groves. It was Howie's packaging, his scheme. Gensler's taking losses in court, right? Ripple, you got the Grayscale lawsuit and much more. Um, and part of your prediction was eventually the incumbents and the people who are fighting end up adopting this. What are your thoughts on where we're at in that timeline?
We're getting close. We have at least one and maybe both presidential candidates looking to adopt Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as a way to encourage innovation because they know it's happening. I mean, the real killer is all this innovation is happening, and there are many Americans are coming up with these innovative things, and then they geofence the US.
Yeah.
In effect, not allowing anybody in the US to try their product. And all those great products are happening outside the US, and all those customers are able to innovate from that new platform. And we're not, because there's this big dark cloud that is the SEC today. And the SEC is living in the past. It's an 80-year-old set of laws that they're clinging to. And it's just time to change. The world's moved on. And if you want to compete in this world, if you want to be the US and still compete and still encourage all the innovation, all the great things that happen in the Silicon Valley, you've got to embrace this. And I think both presidential candidates understand that. Trump did first. He said, "I'm going to be the crypto president. Gary Gensler is going to be fired. I'm going to do this," and and so he grasped it early. But I'm also seeing Kamala have some of the same thoughts. So I'm encouraged that we're getting to that place where it's either embraced or accepted. I mean, it's hard. There are 50 million Americans with wallets, with Bitcoin wallets or crypto wallets. That is not a voting block you can ignore.
And Tim, like, and only for my own anecdotal evidence, but my podcast community, family members, and friends, there's both Democrats and Republicans trading and using this technology. They're not thinking, oh, I'm a Republican, I must use crypto, or I'm a Democrat, I shouldn't. It's just a technology, and it's crazy that it's become political. But maybe that's the way to get legislation through, right?
Yeah, I'm one of those rare people who went to the Giants-Dodgers game and wore a Cubs hat. I met both presidential candidates and liked them both. And I'm still trying to figure out whether I need to come down on one side or the other. Both great people. I mean, that's one thing you don't get from the press, but both great people. Both have their heart in the right place.
Do you think 2025 is the year we see some legislation make it up to a president? We got a bill out of the House this year, Fit 21. I'm hearing talks from Chuck Schumer and top Republicans that we can get something through the lame duck session through the Senate. Do you think 2025 is the year?
Well, what I'm hoping is not that there is some legislation that crosses. In fact, actually, Clinton was brilliant when the internet came out. Everybody said, tax that internet, regulate that internet, get rid of that internet. They were doing the same thing that they're doing to Bitcoin now. And he just said, let's just see how it goes. And by seeing how it goes and not putting like a dark cloud over every entrepreneur trying something new, he really allowed us to create some incredible businesses, trillion-dollar businesses that would have been created outside the US if he had regulated or taxed the internet. And so part of me says, let it rip. But since they already are messing with us through the SEC,
Yeah.
some clear regulation would be awesome because it's clear and then we know how to operate. But I think you need people who kind of understand what's going on in the future to try to regulate today, because the fact that I can't airdrop in the US
Yeah.
is ludicrous.
Ridiculous.
The fact that I can't bet on a baseball game in the US with a crypto bet is ludicrous. The fact that I can't, we've got entirely different rules for giving stock away and giving crypto away. Why? Why? Is it, I mean, if it's a currency, it's a currency. But if they're going to call it an asset, it should be treated like all the other assets. It is, they have put so much of a, I call it the dark cloud, but they're overlapping regulations that get in the way of progress, of innovation, of technology. And all that progress, all that innovation, all that technology is taking place in other countries. And if we don't wake up soon, we're going to lose all that all that innovation. And regulation really does kill innovation. So
Yeah.
the regulators have to be open to allow future experiments to happen. I was at this Harvard Business School reunion, and the guy said, the success of a business long term is how many experiments an hour that business runs. And he compared having an idea in a big business and having to get it through your boss and your boss's boss and your boss's boss before it eventually gets to see the light versus an innovator who comes up with something and he goes to 50 different venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road.
Mm.
And he only needs one of them to say yes.
Right.
I think that attitude needs to happen in innovation. And the regulators need to allow things to rip for a while before they think, hey, something dangerous has happened, as opposed to thinking something dangerous might happen. And so whatever might happen, we're going to make illegal now. I mean, that's really backward thinking. And that will push the US into the dark ages. And you might see countries like El Salvador and the new Argentina and probably Switzerland and Singapore become the super wealthy countries because they're the ones who are letting it rip.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about folks who want to come to the United States. They're in Dubai, Singapore, and so forth. They're like, yeah, it's not worth it. Our legal team is saying, stay away. And it's sad. And it's a lot of jobs that could be here and benefits to the economy and wealth creation. It really sucks. There's things I
Yeah,
want to do.
and we would be customers of those companies. I mean, there are lots of really interesting apps and products that are not going to make it here because they're all the Luddites that don't want anything to change.
Yeah. Um, Tim, I would love to get your take on what what you expect for the remainder of this bull market. 2023, Bitcoin ran up at beginning of this year, incredible run up, a new all-time high before the halving for Bitcoin because of the ETF buying. And we got Fed rate cuts, global liquidity is on the rise again. They're going to start the money printers again to service the debt. What is your outlook for this market? Do you see a blow off top in 2025? Do you have a Bitcoin price prediction?
My Bitcoin price prediction, so my first one was $10,000 by 20, it was in 2014. I made the prediction. I said 3 years, 2017, $10,000. Everybody said, what are you talking about? It's $180. You're off by like 2 decimals. I said, it's going to hit it. And it did. And then it dropped down to 4,000. And at 4,000, I said, okay, it's going to hit 250,000 in 4 years. And that was in 2018. And it didn't. And part of that was all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt spread by the SEC. And that slowed down growth. It slowed down innovation. It slowed down progress. It slowed down technology. I mean, just generally technology. And so it didn't hit that number yet. Well, eventually the government is going to have to come to see the light. And the moment they see the light, it's going to blow through $250,000 so fast. And it might be Bitcoin on the way up, and it might be the dollar on the way down, but it's going to blow through $250,000.
When you say the government sees the light, are you talking about legislation, but also what Trump and some of the Senator Cynthia Lummis proposed, Bitcoin as a U.S. reserve asset? Are you talking about both things or one of those?
Oh, I think any government should think in terms of Bitcoin as an asset is a great thing because it can, as a reserve asset, it's like we hold a bunch of oil or we hold a bunch of gold or whatever. It's a way of holding a commodity that is worth something outside the U.S., not just here. And so it can bail us out of debts or trouble or whatever. So yeah, I think if you're running a company the size of a U.S. government, you should probably have ways of covering your debts, your obligations, your expenses that are not your own currency. Because as we all know, if the dollar gets a lot of inflation, the dollar's not going to be worth very much.
Hmm.
People won't trust them and they are going to run to Bitcoin.
I would love to get your thoughts on the different blockchains that are out there, how you see the future running on blockchains. There's a lot of interoperability being built right now with stablecoins and tokenization and so forth. Um, and with your knowledge of how of the dot-com boom and Web 1 and Web 2.0, do you see there's going to be 100 blockchains in different parts of the world, or there will be maybe 10, kind of aside from Bitcoin is different, but like these smart contract platforms like ETH and Avalanche and whatever it may be. What do you envision will happen there?
Competition is a good thing. It's good to have multiple alternatives. That's one thing that's going on in my head. The other is that you're starting to see a consolidation around Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a bigger and bigger percent of all the tokens out there.
Hmm.
The value of Bitcoin is a bigger percentage, I think, than almost all of them put together. Um, and and that number, the Bitcoin percentage as a percentage of all the coins out there, is growing. Uh, so some of those currencies are going to have some trouble getting support. And if you don't have support, you're valueless and nobody trades in you. So
Hmm.
there will be some that go. Um, the ones that will survive are the ones that, as I mentioned, have a real purpose
Hmm.
and people have to use them to buy something, some product or service that they can't buy some other way. So I think you will always have, I mean, like right now we have Microsoft and they were the operating system for everybody for years. But then there were companies like Intuit or whatever that kind of were able to survive, even though Microsoft was the center of gravity, and it was where all the spreadsheets and the word processor and the databases, they all went into Microsoft.
Hmm.
So I actually think that the DeFi and the ordinals and the smart contracts and whatever else is all going to go into Bitcoin. But there are other alt currencies that have specific uses that are going to be valuable that aren't on Bitcoin.
Hmm. I want to ask you about AI. I know we're running up on time. Earlier, you talked about your digital representation. And, do you feel that is the future of how we may communicate, how content creation may be done, where our representations may be doing this interview versus, us specifically? And overall, your thoughts on AI impact on the job market and what we may expect in the next 10 years seems very disruptive.
Well, as my son, Adam Draper says, AI is going to take all our jobs. So how you think about that is, well, then how do I use AI and create a different job? And humans are innovative. When the horseless carriage came out,
Mm.
humans thought, oh, well, this is the end of humanity because people are just going to be driving around. When electricity came out, they thought the gods were after us. When the internet came out, they said a lot of the same things they're saying now.
Sure.
They're saying, well, wait, how do I control my patent? Or how do they were panicked about that. Humans figure out how to adapt. And we are adapting faster and faster and faster, and we get more and more innovation. And with AI, our innovation is going to take a huge leap forward. Um, So better to get on the train than
Mm.
try to fight it. And I think if you fight it, it's a losing battle because it's too good.
Yeah.
It's so awesome to use AI. So awesome.
Yeah, I personally started
And
to.
I'm looking forward to having robots that go around and have AI and they can be intelligent and I can talk to my robot and say, "Hey, I forgot my wallet at the restaurant. Will you go pick it up?" And and if it's a drone, it can go and shoot over there and say, "This is, my owner's wallet. Pick it up." I think all those things are going to happen. It's going to be really amazing. Also, transportation and
Oh,
space.
space, yeah.
Wow, they're changing in a big way. And a lot of that is AI. It's like, you ever get in a Waymo car or a cruise car? Oh, God, it's fantastic.
So
It's a
Tim,
great experience.
do you think we're at the start of another industrial revolution with all these technologies?
Yeah, we're in a transactional and transportive revolution.
Mm.
That has to be reinvented. We got to figure out what it is we call it, but basically it's AI, Bitcoin, new forms of transportation and space, and new forms of medicine in the body. Those are rocking our world. It's going to be, really awesome what all those things are going to do. So stay tuned and hold on to your hat.
Amazing stuff, Tim. I got some wrap-up questions here for you. First, if you could create your own metaverse, where would you go?
If I were going to create my own metaverse, where would I go? I'd probably watch football and I would interview entrepreneurs all day long.
And favorite food? You get those real quick.
Burgers.
Favorite musician or band?
Um, well, it was Taylor Swift at the beginning. Now it might be Doja Cat. But then, of course, I'm old, so I also like Aerosmith and the Beatles and Elton John and a number of others. So, yeah.
Favorite movie?
Oh, I love movies where the entrepreneur is the hero.
Mm.
So, I liked a couple of great ones with Tom Cruise in them. The uh, when he's the agent for the football player and he takes off and he says,
Uh,
"Who's with me?"
yes,
That was a great moment.
Jerry Maguire. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Maguire. And then Risky Business, where he runs in effect a house of ill repute in his house. Um, and I like science fiction, but I actually like reading science fiction more than I like, and reading comic books more than I like watching the movies,
Yeah.
because the movies, it all feels sort of normal. But you read the books and you're going, "Oh God, that could happen." And you have time to sort of ruminate
Yeah.
on it.
Think about it,
And
right?
so things like Dune, everything by Asimov, Foundation, iRobot, all that stuff. Um, I like Stranger in a Strange Land, another great book.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, there you go. Books, movies, whatever.
All right, Tim, pleasure. Thank you so much. I have to have you back on when Bitcoin hits 250, 250K.
250, you bet. Give me a call. We'll
Awesome.
see.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Tony.